So last time, you didn't see the remnants of my spooky ghost and my spooky pumpkins. Last time we went over, Jesse, were you able to look at the recording?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, awesome. So you've seen that. We went over transparent versus opaque colors, how see-through they are, basically. We went over temperature of color, so warm versus cool. We talked briefly about neutralizing color. So if your blue is too intense, you neutralize it with its opposite on the color wheel, also known as its complement. We're going to use all those tools today as we work on our grisaille. So fortunately, everybody seemed to be pretty dry, right? And Carrie, did you start this?
Mm-hmm.
I realized I didn't tell you go.
Yep, I sure did. I started when you said, okay.
Perfect!
That's when it starts.
She's got it. It's hard to manage everything at once in your brain. You're like, ah. Okay. So when we are glazing, we talked about how if we were like classical French masters, our grisailles would be perfect, you know, drawing perfect renderings. We're obviously not doing that. I'm just trying to teach you the basic concept of how you would glaze. If we were classical realists in the French tradition with 30 years of experience, these would be perfectly rendered black and white, perfect value and everything. And so when we glazed over them, all we would need to do is add color, pretty much. For us, we're going to start with that process of glazing to add in transparent colors. But then after that, if we want to add in some more opaque colors to refine the drawing, we can go ahead and do that. The cool thing about this is we're going to be able to talk a bit about the different ways to apply paint that give you different textural effects. So, to glaze, you can do a kind of dry brush glazing. And just to be clear, I'm going to use these terms in certain ways today. Every artist uses them slightly differently. Some people think glazing is only if it includes oil or medium with it. Other people think glazing is just the dry brush glazing method. I'm just referring it to we're putting color over a black and white painting. So you can also do some more oil-based glazing. So basically for the first one, we're using just pigment. For the second one, we'll have a little bit of oil mixed into our pigment to make it go on more smoothly. With dry brush, that's a particular technique name. When you're doing dry brush, you'll have a little bit of plain pigment. You won't have any oil or medium mixed into it besides what's already in it. But you'll typically take a more coarse brush, let's say this little guy here. And for a true dry brush technique, you'll take a little bit of the pigment and you'll actually brush some of it off. So maybe on a paper towel is typically what people do. And you're just trying to remove a little bit of the excess. And then you're gonna go in and apply it. So you're really kind of scrubbing it on. And so when you do a dry brush technique, what you end up with is you've got this surface, and for a smooth one like mine, you've got a mostly even surface, right? When you apply the dry brushing, the little bits of pigment get deposited in these tiny indentations. And you end up with just a little bit of color spread over it. That kind of makes sense? If you do an oil-based glaze where there's a little bit more liquid, what you're going to end up with is, so if you've got kind of the same surface, just tiny irregularities, you'll end up with more of an overall layer going over the whole thing, but you'll have extra little pockets of more pigment in any of those low points. That kind of makes sense? So the cool thing is that because we've got some pieces with a more texture, like yours, you get to get into scumbling. Ooh, scumbling. Everybody get excited. If you've ever, who's seen a Rembrandt painting? Rembrandt paintings? Mm-hmm. He used a lot of scumbling. And so what scumbling is it's when you've got a layer that has a lot of texture, okay? And so then you can come over with a brush, and it could be more dry, or it could be a little bit more liquid in it. And you're basically drawing your brush across. Oh, here's my nice pretty brush. You're drawing your brush across, and as you go, pigment gets deposited on the sides of these little crevices. And so you end up with all these pockets of color. technically the same thing as what's happening here, but it's gonna be a lot more pronounced because you've got thicker texture. And you end up with this really cool, like, network pattern, organic texture going on of this, like, lighter color, darker color, lighter color, darker color. And because you're going over it, usually with a stiffer brush for scumbling, the top points that are raised, the paint gets kind of wiped right back off of them. And so you end up with these raised parts not getting a lot of color, but the pockets get a lot of color, and it makes a really cool texture. Question?
Can you write out the word?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks.
I don't think there's an E in it, but scumble has an E.
Scumbling. Okay.
To
Cool,
scumble.
thanks.
This might be too, like, it doesn't work quite like this, but it was interesting when you said when you go one way, it's going to be on this side.
Mm-hmm.
So can you go the other way with a different color?
Absolutely. In fact, I have a professor who would intentionally make his works, he would use spray paint, and he would spray it from opposite directions with opposite colors, so that depending on what side of the painting you're on, you see a slightly different color. So, great
cool.
question. Yeah, you absolutely can. And you can also just go back and forth so that you get the same color in all of the pockets. So if anybody has parts on their painting that are a little bit tacky, that just means they're probably dry enough to work on, but you wouldn't want to overwork a particular area. Does anybody have tacky spots? No, tacky. Good. If you ever are working on a painting and it's still a little bit tacky or even wet, not like wet, but a little wet, you can sometimes still work over it. The way that you do that is by using usually a little bit more liquid in your paint and using a softer brush. So you might use a brush like this. So if I had a painting here and I really needed to put a layer on it, but it was a little bit tacky, I could get a really nice soft brush, make sure I have my paint ready to go so there's enough of it that I don't have to like scrub it in. I can just pick it up and lay it on. And you just do gentle strokes. And you don't overwork it. You don't sit there and pet it. That's what a lot of art teachers will get on your case for petting it. You put your paint down and then you just keep petting it. And it sometimes is useful, but generally speaking, it's kind of a no-no, especially if you're a beginner. So if you just lay a brush stroke down and you just let it live there, one, you can get really cool textures, you get cool brush strokes. A lot of like master paintings have this fascinating brushwork. But two, it'll keep that slightly wetter or more tacky paint from lifting off. So if I were to have a painting that, say, had as much texture as her sky, and it was still kind of wet in places, kind of dry in places, you could work into it, either with that gentle approach, or you could do what some, not a lot, but some painters do, and they'll just embrace the chaos. And they'll just work into that, and they'll end up with all these little, like, crumbly bits of, like, half-dried paint, and it's really weird, but some people can do amazing things. But I discourage you guys from doing it because it's really frustrating if you don't intend to do it that way. Okay, so we've got scumbling, we've got dry brush, we've got oil base. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to grab a little bit of paint. Let's do blue. This is a semi-opaque blue because it's a mix of ultramarine and titanium white. The titanium white is very opaque. The ultramarine is pretty transparent. But if I wanted to dry brush this, I'm going to grab a little bit on my brush, and then I'm just going to kind of brush some of it off. So my paint brush has still got plenty of color on it, and then I would just draw it across. And what you'll notice is I'm not filling in the sky, but you can pass that around. You can see how the texture of the canvas is picking up little bits of paint. So that's not going to be a great technique to cover the entire sky, but it's an awesome technique if you already have a base color down and you want to give it a little bit more life.
Will that work though on a wet like, because you're saying if you already have a base color down, so like, would you need your base color to already be dry for the dry brushing to really work? Okay.
Yeah, but if you had a wet surface and you wanted to just apply color, then we'd go the really soft technique. So, thank you. For this, we'll grab a little bit of oil, and we're gonna grab a transparent. we'll grab this cobalt. Thank you. Yeah, the cobalt can go in the transparent bag.
Nice.
So for this, the cobalt is already more transparent. It's also a little more liquid, just that particular tube happens to be. And so I've got a nice kind of thinned out version of that color. And if this was really wet and I didn't want to do too much, I could just draw it over that gently. And then I've got a nice beginning of color on there. Now with this, it's pretty wet. So if I were to dry this, if I were to do a lot of oil and then I let it dry upright, if you've added too much oil or too much Gamsol, if you're using that, you can end up with drips. So you want to make sure you don't oversaturate your painting.
Is that a semi-transparent or transparent?
This one is pretty transparent. So if I'm doing the glazing today, this is probably what most of you guys are going to want to do for most of it. Kind of an in-between of these two. We'll have a tiny bit of oil, but not a lot. And we'll probably want to do a more scrubbed in version. And so for this, you can do this a lot of ways. You can just get a brush and kind of, see how I'm kind of scrubbing it in? Just to be clear, this technique of pushing forward with the brush, it will ruin your brushes. But you know what? It gets the effect you want. So just don't do it if you buy a $100 brush. What I like to do is I'll apply something like that, and then I'll come with my nice handy dandy paper towel, and I will just rub it out. And then you get a nice colorful layer. It's muted, right? Because it's got that gray undertone. And I've removed any extra oil, so I'm not gonna have too much oil. But I've got a nice color going on. And a great thing about glazing, like I talked about, we'll glaze some today, but then we might want to paint with more opaque paint over it to refine our paintings. A really fun thing about doing this glazing first is it creates the effect of oiling out your painting. Has anyone heard that term? Okay, so oiling out is something that people will do for two main purposes. The first is if you paint a painting and then a couple weeks later it's pretty much dry and some patches are really matte and some patches are really glossy. You can take a little bit of oil, just that without the pigment, right? Take your brush with just a little bit of oil, scrub it on like you did there, gently wipe it off, and you've applied a layer of oil that will help those more like dry matte passages become a little more glossy. It's basically a way to kind of achieve a varnished look if it's too soon to varnish it. Does that make sense? The other reason to do it, some people will oil out their entire painting before each session. And that's because they want a nice wet surface to work into. So if you really like texture and you really like dry brushing, you wouldn't want to do that. But if you like smooth paint and smooth brushes and smooth surfaces, you can oil out your painting, and then each time you add a stroke, it goes on more smoothly because it has that nice wet surface to work into. And so as we glaze today, we'll be essentially oiling out our surfaces while also adding color. So if we then come in with some more opaque, you'll have the effect of working into an oiled out painting. I'll give you kind of another method of working. Any questions?
Can you remind us, like, the purpose of the grisaille? Is it so that I can, like, I mean, I have a lot of green in this painting, for example, like, all these hills are, like, different shades of green. Is the idea that, like, with the grisaille, I'm going to take the same green and, like, put it over everything, and it's going to kind of already be the right tones? Or is it, like, more of a template?
Yeah, great question. It's kind of doing the duty of being your drawing, your overall drawing, and being your value, right? So that your lights and darks are already established and you don't have to think about that. So you're still going to think about nuance of color like we talked about last week.
Yeah.
You're still going to think about, well, this is a more yellow green and this is a more purplish green. As you go
only
over.
putting transparent colors
For now,
is the
yeah.
idea, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Orange
then
transparency.
that value is going to come through.
Exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
And what you'll find is as you're adding more colors, it may darken a little bit, right? Because you're adding color over a gray. But then that gives you opportunity later on if you do want to add more opaque pigments or more white, it'll really glow. And that's why a lot of the paintings that are made with this technique are those really beautiful, like chiaroscuro, light and dark kind of paintings. paintings that really have a lot of form and a lot of value and a lot of beautiful shadows, but they're kind of that muted look. But you can still get plenty of light achieved with this method. It just requires like making sure you're applying the light strategically, I guess. But yeah, the purpose is mostly just to say, I don't have to think about the value of these hills. I don't think about where to put them.
Mm-hmm.
They're here, they're this value, I'm just adding color.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. And then I had one more question. Are there like famous painters that are like known for using this technique?
I mean, a lot of like dead painters.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I probably would only know the dead ones.
Yes. Well, I want to name some, but I'll be honest, I don't know for sure.
Is there a way to know for sure, like when you look at a painting?
You could probably get a sense of it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm sure there's like people who have like lists and stuff. If you looked up an
Okay.
individual artist, they might well have that information.
Okay.
Because anyone like, see, it's so tricky because I'm immediately thinking ones that have that effect, but then I don't want to say that because I don't actually know that they worked that way.
Okay. That's fine.
Yeah.
I'm just curious. Yeah.
I could always
I'll
look it up.
Yeah.
No. Okay.
Sorry, anyone else have questions?
Yeah. Yes. Questions. Okay. If there are no more questions, then what I'm going to do is we're going to take the transparent pigments, and you're going to do the same thing you did last time. Take a blue, take a red, take a yellow. Let's filter out. You said these are the semis?
Yeah.
I considered this one transparent, so we'll go ahead and include that. This one should be transparent one, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Right.
And I'm just going to throw ones in based on my experience with them.
Yeah.
And black and white we'll put here.
These are, and we don't know.
We don't know.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't.
Yeah, this has
This
like a
one I'll
box
call
with a line
transparent.
through it.
That's pretty transparent. That's not. That's not. Actually, not sure about this one. Yeah, it's like a semi. Cool.
Box.
Pretty much use that one up. Great. Cobalt actually is typically pretty transparent. Does that go on the couldn't do top of it? No, it's Prussian. You still want that one too? Magenta. And then this one.
It had like a box on the front.
Ah, yeah. Yeah, that's pretty big.
Was the box open or was the box
It was
white or black?
Black.
Yes.
I think black is okay.
It really. But see,
Yeah, that one's got a box
This
with
one-
a line through it and 3 plus signs.
honestly, guys, I don't know.
That's like super, super,
I-
super open.
I can tell you from experience
Oh,
which
what's
ones are
this?
more or less. That one should be pretty transparent.
Well, based on what you taught me, this is opaque. Right?
She just likes your
That was too good. You're not wrong. I just that I have worked with that, and it's one of the ones that that
Okay.
artist uses that is more transparent. More
Okay,
opaque.
okay.
But you're right. Of her collection, it is one of the more opaque. So let's put her here. Showing up the teacher. Gosh. Okay. Everybody choose a color. Choose a blue. Choose a reddish, and choose a yellow. I think we only really have one kind of transparent yellow. And then take black and white, and we'll start glazing. Sound good?
Yeah.
And there's spaces in there, so we can shift a couple people in there.
Sorry,
So-
one more.
Yeah, what were the colors again?
The primaries: red,
Yeah,
yellow,
primaries.
blue.
Okay, gotcha.
Mhm.
So I'm interested that you said we should also take black and white.
Mhm.
So what are we gonna do with those?
It's for if you're painting later on,
Oh, okay,
or if you
okay,
like
okay.
need to neutralize
Okay,
something.
gotcha. Cool.
You're right that like for pure glazing.
Yeah. No, sorry for your question.
No, it's a great question. I love questions. It means someone's listening.
Oh, I'm listening.
Just listen.
Okay, we've got little dishes for oil too, if you want to grab one. And then if you need the oil refill, we have oil here to refill it.
How many is